Hi Room 4 friends, it's Miss Corey and I'm here to help you with your letters for this week. So we've got V, we've got X, and we've got Y. So we're going to start with the V sand letter first. Follow along and let's trace it. So V has a tail that starts at the ground and goes up to the midline, and we kind of have this hump. We're going to go down to the ground again and then back up to the midline, and V has a little tail. So let's trace that again. So we'll start with this long tail at the ground and go up to the midline with this little hump, go down to the ground, back up to the midline, and a little tail. So that is V. Now let's look at X. X kind of looks like a wave, doesn't it? So it's got this long tail that we're gonna slope up to the midline and then curve down to the ground with a little tail. And then we have just a slash through the middle. So let's try that again. We've got this long tail at the ground going up to the midline with this hump kind of coming down to the wave and a little tail at the ground and a slash through the middle. So that's X. And we're gonna finish with Y. So Y has a long tail to a hump up to the midline, down to the ground, and up to the midline. And we've got a loop with a small tail. So let's trace that again. We've got a long tail going up to the midline, a hump, down to the ground, back up to the midline, back down to the underground, loop, and in with a small tail. The other interesting thing about Y is it's a vowel. So A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. So that's what we have this week. We have Y, X, and V. So let's write it on the board. So I have V here in blue, and you see how we have a long tail up to the midline, down to the ground, back up to the midline, a little tail. So let's try and write that together. So we're going to start a long tail at the ground, up to the midline, a hoop, or actually a hump at the midline, down to the ground, back up to the midline, and a little tail. So a long tail up to the midline and back down to the ground, up to the midline, and a little tail. And one more time. So down to the ground, up to the midline, back down to the ground, and a little tail. So that is V. Let's look at X. Remember, X kind of looks like a wave with a slash through it. So we're going to start with a long tail, and go up to the midline and come back down with a little tail, and then we have a slash through it. So here's a long tail up to the midline, down, and then a slash through it. Actually, that needs to come all the way down. You see? And then we're going to finish with Y. So Y has that long tail that comes up to the midline, come down to the loop. So that long tail up to the midline and loop. So those are your letters for this week. V, X, and Y. All right, do your best, and I hope you have a great week. Take care.